If there's one dish you need to have on your repertoire, it's this. It's the chicken biryani. It's a really decadent dish. It's beautifully fragrant, and I can't tell you how much you need to cook this at home. There's lots of different stages to it, so don't be scared about that. The first thing we're going to do, which is stage one, is marinating the chicken. So we're going to start with that. I've just got some chicken thighs here. I've taken all the fat off and skinned them and just chopped them into nice sort of bite-sized chunks. Into that, I'm going to put a couple of tablespoons of yoghurt. I always use a Greek yoghurt, just a nice thick yoghurt. There we go. And then I'm going to add my spices into there. So all you need to do is a teaspoon of salt for seasoning. Just sprinkle that in. I'm going to put some hot chilli in there because I like it fairly warm, but you can by all means miss this out. So I'm just going to put half a teaspoon of chilli in. I'm going to put some lovely fragrant garam masala in there, a nice big teaspoon. I love my garam masala, so I do go a little bit heavy on that, but I'm just going to put a sort of heaped teaspoon in for now. I'm going to also put in a mild chilli powder as well. This is Kashmiri chilli powder, and this is really for the vibrance and the colour. So I'm going to put in a heaped tablespoon of that. There we go. I'm also going to add some coriander seeds, which I'm going to just pound slightly. I've got my pestle and mortar here. So just a teaspoon. I'm just going to sprinkle that in. Just give that a little crunch. It starts to smell really lovely. You don't need it in a fine powder or anything, but just sort of roughly chopped up. It's all going in the marinade, so it's fine. And then I'm going to pop in about half a teaspoon of turmeric as well. So just pop that in. There we go. The other bits I'm going to add in there are garlic. So 1 clove of garlic, which I've finely sliced. And I've also grated some fresh ginger. So sort of about a tablespoon of that in there. Once you've got those ingredients in there, I'm going to give that all a stir through just to get all of the flavours and all of the spices marinating in through the yoghurt and into the chicken, and then we're just going to pop that to one side. So that's what you're looking for, just all of that chicken marinated in that lovely yoghurt and all of those fresh spices, and I'm just going to pop that to one side whilst I do the next bit. The biryani is all about decadence. It originated as a dish that was created for the Mughal emperors, and they wanted to use all of the best ingredients, so all of your whole spices, your cloves, cardamoms, and the other thing that they liked to use was saffron. So we're going to be just steeping some saffron in a little bit of milk, and the reason that I'm going to do that is to draw the colour out, draw out that lovely yellow. So just about a good pinch of saffron and probably about a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of milk, just into a bowl, and we're just going to leave that, give that a little stir. But what you'll see is very quickly the beautiful orange colour will start to be drawn out of those stamens. So I'm just going to pop that to one side, and we're going to start making our sauce. The second stage of making your biryani is all about the onions and making your sauce. The onions I always cut into rings just because that's the way I like to do it. Again, it's all about keeping it fairly chunky. What I like to use when I make this dish is ghee. And what ghee will do is it gives a really nutty flavour. It's quite unique in its flavour. It's not the same as using oil. So I do like to use ghee for those very special dishes. So I'm just going to put in about 2 tablespoons. And I know that sounds a lot, but this dish will feed at least 6 to 8 people. So don't be afraid of using that ghee. It's really about putting all that lovely flavour in there. Once the ghee has melted, I'm going to pop in, I've got 3 onions here that I've sliced up. As with most meat dishes, when you're cooking Indian food, it's really important that you caramelise your onions to a really nice dark brown colour. And I'm going to take a good 20 minutes, even up to half an hour to do that, because what I will be doing once I've browned my onions is I'll be taking half of them out and just popping them on the side, and continuing to make the sauce with the remaining half that's in there. So just coat them all with the ghee and keep them moving, keep an eye on them and leave them for about 20 minutes until you get that beautiful dark brown caramelised colour. The onions are halfway through, they're starting to look nice and brown, so it's a good time to move on to do the rice. For this dish, I've got 2 cups of rice in here that I've washed just till the water runs clear. You've got rid of all of that excess starch. I'm just going to pop that into the pan here. Because I only want the rice to par-cook, because when we put the biryani together, it'll be cooking in the oven for a good half an hour afterwards, I'm going to use slightly less water. So because I've got 2 cups of rice in here, I'd normally use 4 cups of water. I'm only going to use 3 cups of water this time. So I'm just going to pour in my water. I want this to come to a nice boil. And unlike when you normally cook rice, where you turn it down and you put a lid on, I'm just going to let the water boil away. And what we're aiming for is that our rice cooks really nicely, but it's got a tiny little bite still to it. So we're going to keep an eye on that, make sure it doesn't boil over, and then we're going to take that off the heat, and that's stage number 3 of the biryani done. So the rice is looking cooked now. I'm just going to have a little taste, make sure it's still got that little bite. That's perfect. I'm just going to leave that to one side to let it cool down, just fluff through it a little bit and let it cool. And then we're going to start on the sauce. Okay, so my onions have been cooking away in that ghee and they've caramelised to a really lovely dark brown colour. What I'm going to do now is pull out all of the really crispy onions, because I'm going to use those during the building of the biryani, because within each layer of the biryani we're going to have some lovely crunchy onions, some fresh coriander leaves and a little bit more ghee. So I'm just going to set that to one side. For me, the biryani is all about lots of decadent whole spices. I want each mouthful to have a new burst of flavour, a new zing from coriander or a warmth from the peppercorn. So what we're going to start off with is some bay leaves, a couple of bay leaves just in there. Just start to toast them off. We're going to use about a 5 centimetre piece of cassia bark, which I'm just going to break up and just put in. There we go. I'm just adding a couple of whole chilies, which I'm going to stab and put directly into the pan. And again, personal preference. If you're cooking for children, for example, you don't necessarily need to put in the whole chilies. The next thing I'm going to put in, love them or hate them, whole cardamoms. They give that lovely bittersweet flavour, and all you want to do is just crack them open. So I'm going to put in 5, actually I'll put in 6. So count how many you put in. If you want to, you can count them out the sauce if you can find them. If you don't like to use the whole of the cardamom pod, what you can do is just take the seeds out, give the seeds a bash and use those. I do like them, so I'm going to pop 6. Yep, I've got 6 in there. Alongside the cardamom, cloves, so brother and sister spice always go in together. I'm going to be using 5 cloves, and I'm going to pop those straight in. I'm going to put in a teaspoon of black peppercorns, whole black peppercorns. A teaspoon of fresh whole coriander seeds, and they give a real nice zing. I'm going to put in a teaspoon of cumin seeds for warmth, and half a teaspoon of turmeric as well. I'm going to give that a stir through, get those toasting, and then I'm going to add in my garlic and ginger as well. As with whole spices, as soon as you can smell them, you know that you're ready for your next ingredient. Okay, I'm going to also now put in some sliced garlic, probably 2 whole cloves of garlic. There we go. And some lovely fresh ginger that I've grated beforehand, so I'm going to pop that in as well. And whilst those are cooking down, I'm going to slice up some tomatoes just to get that gravy and that sauce ready. So I like to use fresh tomatoes for this dish because it's a posh dish and it's a dish that you want to add all of your best ingredients to. There we go. You don't have to be precise about it. You can be fairly rough, but try and get them fairly small because you want them all to break down in the sauce before you add your marinated chicken in. There we go. So just pop that to one side just until we're happy that the garlic and the ginger has cooked down. Okay, so into that I'm going to pop my tomatoes. Just push those straight in. Give it a stir, and I want my masala sauce now to all come together, and this will probably take about 5 or 6 minutes just to get all of the tomatoes and the onions to all melt together and all of those spices to really start to infuse into the masala sauce, and you get all the wonderful aromatics of those spices coming through. So we're going to come back to this in a few minutes, but keep an eye on it and give it a stir. So the masala sauce is coming together really nicely. It's smelling really fragrant in the kitchen. If your masala sauce does tend to catch on the bottom, just add a little splash of water and that'll just lift everything off the bottom of the pan, and it'll help to break down the tomatoes and bring that sauce together. So that's looking lovely. Once your masala is looking really chunky, looking like it's all cooked down and the tomatoes have all broken down, it's time to add the chicken in. And all I'm going to do is just pop it straight in and cook it until it's lovely and cooked through. There are lots of different ways of making a biryani, and this is a northern biryani from sort of like the Lucknow region. And this is a cooked biryani. You can also have raw biryanis where you marinate the meat raw and then cook it in the biryani as a raw meat, but for this dish I like to do this as a cooked biryani. It's fairly mild in that there's not a lot of chilli heat to it, and that's intentional. If you do like your food a little bit hotter, then by all means chop up a chilli and pop that in as well. So I'm just going to give this a stir, and it's got that lovely orange colour, and that will just make that biryani look beautiful at the end. So I'm just going to turn the gas up a little bit, and we're going to cook the chicken for about 15-20 minutes, just till it's just cooked through. You don't need to leave it any longer than that, because once the meat is ready, we're going to start to build up that biryani and pop that in the oven. I'm going to also turn on my oven to about 180 degrees so that it's ready for that biryani to go in there once everything's ready. So we'll leave that for about 15 minutes, as I said, and we'll come back to it. So the sauce is ready now. It's looking really thick and luscious, and the chicken is cooked through, so I'm really pleased with that. I'm going to turn that off, and I'm just going to leave that there. Whilst that's been cooking, I've had a bit of a clear down. I've just organised myself, which is really important when you cook a biryani. So I've got my chicken ready to go there. I've also got the saffron that's been steeping in the milk, and you can see that lovely colours come through now. I've also chopped up some fresh coriander. My crispy onions are also ready and waiting. I've got my ghee, and I've got the cooked rice. The other thing that you need is a casserole dish that's got a really nice tight fitting lid as well. What we're going to do first is we're just going to put a little bit of ghee in the bottom of that casserole dish, and that's just really to coat the bottom. Then it's really important that you almost halve your sauce. So you've got enough chicken for each of the layers. So I'm just going to separate that out so I can see what I'm going to do. And then the rice, we're just going to put into thirds. So just roughly, you don't have to be precise about it, just so that I know for each layer I've got enough rice. We're going to start with a layer of rice at the bottom, which I'm just going to sprinkle in. What you'll get, hopefully, at the bottom is a really nice crispy layer of rice. Some people like that, some people don't. I quite like the crispy rice at the bottom. There we go. I've got a third of the rice in there now. What I'm going to do is just put in the other little bits. Just a little sprinkling of the saffron milk. Try and get some of those strands in because they do look really beautiful in there. I'm going to put a little pinch of fresh coriander in. A little bit of the onions. Again, just sprinkle. And then I'm going to put a few little dollops of the ghee in as well. Without ghee, you can't really have a biryani, so make the most of it. Once you've got those bits in, then we're going to scoop in the chicken. So again, you don't have to be precise, just be fairly rough and ready, but it just smells beautiful already. And once that's all been baked together, it's going to be just wonderful. Then sprinkle in your next lot of rice. It's almost like building a little Indian lasagna, if you like. This is lovely to do with the children because it's something that they can just help with. They can make a bit of a mess, but they can really get involved in cooking and being part of the kitchen, which I think is so important. Just make sure all the chicken is covered over, and it's the same process again. So you just want to sprinkle over a little bit of the saffron, a good sprinkling of the coriander, and what that does is every mouthful you get a real freshness that comes through. There we go. And this is why this dish is so special. There's so many different elements to it, but you know, please don't be scared whenever you open up a recipe that's got a biryani in there and you see those long lists of all the spices. If you're organised and if you're, you know, you think through each of the bits, it's actually a really easy dish to put together. And they have a saying in India that when you cook a biryani and you invite your guests over, as soon as it's cooked and it comes out the oven, you don't need to call your guests to the dining table because a biryani just calls them to it because of all the wonderful fragrance that comes out of the pot. And then all you want to do is just top off with the final layer of rice. This is a great dish to do when you have got guests because you can do it the night before and then you can just pop it in the oven, but also it goes a long way. It feeds a lot of people. So when you cook a biryani traditionally, what you would normally do is put the lid on and then you would stick the lid down with a dough that you sort of mould into place. And that style of cooking is called cooking in dum. And the reason that they call it that is once the biryani has had time to cook, what they do is they tap it on the side, and if it makes a dum sound, you know it's ready. So the final bit of coriander, I'm just going to use my fingers just to get those final bits of onion on top, and that is your beautiful, wonderful biryani ready. And I'm just going to pop the lid on that and put that in the oven for half an hour. So the biryani's ready. It looks and smells amazing. I just wish you could smell it. It's all crispy on top and I'm just going to dig right into it. And what I want to do is make sure I get every single layer in each portion that I serve up. It's so light, but look at that. Look at all the chicken that's just falling through there. I can see it's all nice and crispy on the edges, and the coriander is really helping. I've got a nice big chilli there, so I'm going to have that bowl for myself, I think. It's looking and smelling so good. Everybody's going to want to have a bit of this.